Not that long ago, there was quite a bit of correspondence and things in general happening between Wales and Milan. It was in the context of one of our local heroes, who was the confessor of the saint of this day. Like quite a few excellent Welshmen who would have been bishops, actually one was appointed already but wasn't able to be ordained, but were found on the continent carrying on the work of counter-reformation away from home. These were clustered in places like Italy and Belgium and France, Douai, Reims and so on, also in Spain, Valladolid. And these were in contact with important people, such as precisely this great reformer, Charles Borromeo. And it, of course, was hoped that what was only a political thing would blow over eventually, but alas, it was to stay, and has remained so to this day. Remember now, it wasn't clear which way things would go at that stage of the Reformation. With regard to the influence of this man, he was the man for the hour. He could have gone into an ordinary ecclesiastical career without being, as we would say, switched on. He was in a noble family, and very early in life he was showered with church benefices, and he could have gone into a happy mode of life. But even though at that terribly early age he had, in name at least, great responsibility, unexpectedly, rather like the Abbot of La Trappe, much later, Abbot de Rancé, he took it seriously. And this young man, who was already at the age of 22, in name at least responsible for that massive diocese of Milan, because his uncle, who was of the Medici family, had become Pope, Paul IV, and appointed him to this lucrative position, he actually did realize what the Lord was asking him. So, for a while he had to live in Rome itself. He was a very young cardinal, and he, of course, had to be ordained eventually, and he was the first resident bishop of that massive diocese for 80 years. And he visited the diocese more than once. It's a massive diocese, and it, to this day, has its own rite, which causes hiccups if one celebrates there, because things aren't quite the same in the Ambrosian Missal. Things happen unexpectedly. And there he had this element of influence because he had a relation with his clergy and with his people. Now, this element of the relationship between a bishop and his priests is far more important than sometimes people imagine. We see, as it happens, just where we are here, the influence of a bishop who's close to his priests. We have young men who drift towards this diocese from other dioceses because they know it's a peaceful diocese in which they're well cared for. The bishop has the ear and the heart of his priests and cares for them actually even before ordination. Should they be in trouble in one place, he'll send them to somewhere else to make sure they are finished and ordained under him. He's ordained a colossal number of priests in his long innings as a bishop. Colossal number. Now, with regard to this, it's important because even though under this hero of a counter-reformer, the pattern of synods started to emerge, and for a good reason, he was applying the decrees of the Council of Trent, and therefore it demanded a huge amount of investigation as to what to do, e.g. setting up seminaries. Nevertheless, he did not spend his time in these impersonal meetings. He had this element of realizing that nothing can take the place of pastoral work, and therefore he was mobile. He also had a whole teaching for his clergy. It was the question of the quality of what is happening on a daily basis, because the sanctification of the priest is in what he's doing anyway. That is to say, he's always in touch with the Blessed Trinity. Grace is passing through him as through a wire. So what he has to do is, as it were, plug into the power that's there passing through him and be in contact with what's happening around him. That is engaging. Now it's the same day, but engaged in. E.g., and he insists on this, the quality of the office celebrated, the divine office, the quality of the holy sacrifice offered, and in this he gives tips, such as not to talk in the sacristy, because he insists that the quality of the celebration and of the office is bound to be influenced by what has just happened, because the head is full of words if it comes straight from a noisy sacristy. And he also emphasizes the importance of remembering that actually after receiving a grace, such as Holy Communion, again the fruit of it depends on our holding it in. Again, concretely, not dispersing grace through leaking. That means that, as actually in a much earlier work, The Imitation of Christ, the soul has to enjoy its God and remain as a tabernacle, watching and waiting for the word at that point. Because if other words come in, human words, then the Lord can't really get through, and he might have something to say. Indeed, the Lord himself did say this: the poor you have with you always, me you do not always have. Indirectly also pointing out that there are moments when we need just to be attentive to his presence. With regard to the influence of this man, people aren't fully aware of actually the power he had in history. He was really the one who pushed and pushed for the third session to get underway and to be concluded, and that was the most important session of the Council of Trent. Paul V was eventually Pope when the fruits of it were able to come out in the publication of the Missal, which is much later now, 1570. But all this was pushed powerfully by this energetic young man who knew that this was extremely important to counteract what? Well, he was involved in it. He was also going to places like Switzerland, and he knew how the power of Calvinism and Zwingliism was huge and a threat. There was also witchcraft going on in that part of the world, and he had to handle all that, which is not surprising, because who is it that wants to destroy the church and take away the real presence? Well, we all know the answer. I just finish because right now it's people like this that we need. People who don't just think they can do it by organizing and programming perfect pastoral programs, because that has just the effect that it's bound to have, a human enterprise. But people who are precisely engaged with their God, they are then, like a musical instrument, able to be played over with the gift of the Holy Spirit, just to be tapped and turned and moved and switched on, listening. Because, alas, what has happened in our time is that we think we can create effects. It would be better, I think, not to think so much about the spectacular, but about the serene. Because our God is not a God usually of the spectacular. He's a God who demands access. And where has he access? Is it in the thing which draws applause, or in the thing which calms? Remembering that one of the reasons why these reformers were effective is that they also harnessed one great asset: beauty. Do you know that Charles Borromeo was the patron of Palestrina? And the Counter-Reformation also succeeded partly because they harnessed the power and healing of beauty.